The CEO found a little girl sleeping on trash on Christmas Eve. He couldn't believe his eyes. He decided to take her home for the night. But when he tried to talk to her, she just stared at him blankly. What he saw next broke his heart. A successful CEO named William had worked his way up from nothing. He knew what it was like to be poor and what it was like to go without food, so every year he made sure to give back by donating money to the local homeless shelter. But this year he wanted to do something different. He wanted to find someone in need and help them personally. On Christmas Eve morning, he got into his car and drove around the city looking for someone in need. He didn't want to give money to someone who didn't deserve it. He wanted to find someone who was down on their luck but still had hope. As he drove, he saw a group of people gathered around a trash can. He stopped the car and got out to see what was going on. And that's when he saw her. Tucked away in a corner, trying to make herself small, was a little girl. She was no older than 6 and was wearing a dirty, torn dress. She had pulled some newspapers and discarded candy wrappers around her to try to make a makeshift blanket. And there she was, fast asleep. He felt a pang of sympathy and walked towards her. As he got closer, he could see that she was shivering. He knelt down beside her and gently touched her shoulder. "Hey, little one," he said softly. "Can you hear me?" The girl stirred and looked up at him with big, scared eyes. "Are you cold?" he asked. The girl nodded, burying her face in the newspaper. He knew he couldn't leave her out in the cold like this, so he picked her up and cradled her close. She was so tiny and light that it made his heart ache. He carried her to his car and wrapped her in a blanket. Then he drove her home. When he opened the door to his mansion, the first thing he noticed was the Christmas tree. It was huge, adorned with beautiful ornaments and topped with a shining star. The sight of the tree brought back childhood memories of Christmas mornings spent with his family. He had worked hard to achieve the life he had now, and part of that success meant being able to provide for others, especially children. He took the girl to his guest room and laid her on the bed. He stripped off her dirty clothes and put on a clean nightgown he found in the closet. He then tucked her in, and for a moment, the only sound was the soft ticking of the clock. He sat by the bed watching her sleep, and that's when he noticed the tattoo. It was a small one, a tiny butterfly on the inside of her wrist. It shouldn't have been there, not on a child. This was no ordinary child, he thought, a shiver running down his spine. Suddenly, the room was filled with the sound of sirens. In a panic, the girl bolted upright in bed, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't worry," he said, trying to calm her down. "You're safe here." But she wasn't listening. She was already out the door and running. He rushed after her, finding her in the bathroom. She was kneeling by the sink, her hands cupped around her mouth, retching. He knew that look. He'd seen it too many times before. The look of someone who had seen too much, experienced too much for a child. As he embraced her, he made a silent promise to himself. He would find out who she was and why she was living in a trash can on Christmas Eve. He would make sure she never had to go through this ever again. The next day, he called the police and told them about the girl. They had no record of her, which was unusual. Usually when a child goes missing, there is a report. But this girl, whoever she was no exception. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no sign of her parents or any relatives. He had checked all the adoption records too, but there was nothing. It was like she had fallen out of thin air. Then one day he got a call from the social services. They had found a lead on the girl's parents. He listened as the woman on the phone told him about her, about their suspicions and their fears. When she was done, he felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under him. The picture that the woman painted of the girl's parents was not a pretty one. They were not only neglectful, they were abusive. He had hoped for a different outcome, but deep down he knew this was the most likely scenario. He had seen enough of these cases to know how they usually ended. But he had made a promise to himself, and he intended to keep it. He would find out who she was and why she was living in a trash can on Christmas Eve. He would make sure she never had to go through this ever again, and so the search continued. And finally, after months of searching, he found her. The truth was not what he expected, but it was a truth that would change both of their lives forever.